بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. So I'm making this presentation today because I've had a couple of current fourth year students reach out to me regarding how to read in Jama Atfi and if I could help them out with that, and how to mark our Qur'ans and so on and so forth. So I just thought it'd be good to make this in case anyone else is confused, in case anyone just doesn't seem to get it. So hopefully, insha'Allah, this will clarify that. It's not very long, it's just 18 slides, insha'Allah, so we'll be able to get through it pretty quickly. And insha'Allah, get all the tools you need in order to read it in Jama Atfi. Just a heads up, I made this in like a day and I don't have a script or anything, so I apologize if it's a bit unorganized. Hopefully not too unorganized that you can't follow, but and I apologize if I'm like stuttering and stumbling a bit throughout. So with that, inshallah, we can get started. So contents of the presentation. So there's 5 main things that we'll be going over. So this is just a quick overview, inshallah. The first thing that we'll be discussing is how to use Qatar min ghayth nafa, as I'm sure all of you are familiar with this work. And in this work, we're able to find out what are the ikhtilafat, who's reading in a different way, and what exactly are they doing in that particular lafz. And inshallah, we'll just go over some of the pros and cons of this book, how to use the book, and making sure that we don't get confused by some of his wording, inshallah, which we'll go into a bit more detail. If anyone wants to use the alternative, which is al-budur al-zahira, feel free to use that as well. From what I remember, I compared between the two, and it just seems like Qatar is a lot easier. But if you want to check it out for yourself and see if maybe you like it better, if it just works better for you, then feel free, inshallah. From what I remember, even from the older students, when I was asking them how to do Jama Atfi, then they also recommended Qatar min Ghayth al-Nafa. The next topic that we'll be talking about is marking our mushaf, which I call the shorthand version. And marking against, we'll be learning how to mark against hafs, as you can see that's underlined, and how to mark your Quran. So what does this mean? Marking against hafs, which again we'll be going into much more detail later on with examples, is when we're writing down what exactly are we supposed to be writing in our Quran? Is it all supposed to be in our notebook? Should there even be anything in our Quran when we're doing Jama Atfi and so on and so forth? Inshallah, we'll be discussing that in a bit more detail. The next thing that we'll be talking about is the actual reading. The main thing that I'm sure you guys are all here for is the method of Jama Atfi. What exactly is it? How do I do it? Is it maybe you're hearing it in class and you're just confused as to why exactly did the individual go back to read for this rāwī and not go for the other rāwī, so on and so forth. Inshallah, we'll be talking about that in detail as well with examples. And marking our notebook, which I call the longhand version, basically we have to answer a couple of questions, which is who is reading, what are they reading, and where are they reading from. So we have who, what, where, and then I added when and why, which is, am I allowed to read for this qari or not? So like I said in the previous section about the method of Jama Atfi, that's pretty much going to be in detail over here, as well as a bit of overlap. So inshallah, we'll be able to go into a lot more detail as to how exactly are we supposed to be reading in Jama Atfi. And lastly, we have some important rules, which I just kind of added in. There's quite a bit to say over here, but I just suffice with like muds and silas, for example, which are common throughout our entire reading of the entire Quran, inshallah. So it's just very, very important to be familiar with these concepts. Talking about how exactly do we use this book called Qatar min Ghayth al-Nafa. So this is the work, Qatar min Ghayth al-Nafa, written by a scholar named Muhammad Nabhan bin Hussein Misri, and he did an excellent job at just really making it easy for the reader or for the student and to mark their Quran. As you can see here, that's in the prose section, that the author, he simplified it a lot by just mentioning the ayah number, and then he mentions the word in which there's ikhtilafin, and then he mentions in a chart form who is reading it differently and what exactly are they doing. Now the cons, I might be over exaggerating here, but the cons is that he has some istilahat and he has a hizb division, which inshallah we'll see what I mean by that on the next slide. Over here I have a couple of examples from Qatar, just some random examples from the beginning. Perhaps you guys are familiar with a few of them that you've already read. But over here we have, as I said, the ayah number, and then we have the word in which is ikhtilafin, and then here he's going to mention who has ikhtilaf, like we see here, li Warsh, wa li Hamza, and then he mentions what exactly is their ikhtilaf and what are they doing differently. So here we see فيها النقل مع قصر وتوسط وطول المد لورش ولحمزة في الموصول النقل والسكت وقفا والسكت وصلا بخلف عن خلاد، وهكذا في كل موصول أي موصول خاص. ورقق الراء ورش وأمالها التثنيثي الكسائي وقفا. So as you can see, he just very simply lays out what exactly are the who is doing it first of all, and what exactly are they doing in each word. Now, another example for how easy it is to use is that he just brings yu'minun, all the yu'minuns that come, بمؤمنين, نؤمن, فأتوا, all of these have أبدل الهمزة فيهن ورش والسوسي وصلا ووقفا وحمزة وقفا. So Warsh and Susi, Jim and Ya are going to be doing ibdal of these hamzas. From yu'minun we get yuminun, bimu'minina, bimu'minina, nu'minu, numinu, fa'tu, fatu. As well as, they're going to be doing that waslan and waqfan. Hamza is going to only be doing it waqfan. Now, one of the cons, as I have said, was that he brings the hizb division, meaning that in ayah number 3, this is the first time an ibdal comes up in this hizb. So this is yu'minun. I believe the ayah is alladhina yu'minuna bil ghaybi wa yuqimuna as-salah. So that's ayah number 3. However, in ayah number 4, we have another word, yu'minun. Ayah number 6, 8, 13, 23. In this hizb also have ibdal. They all have words which have ibdal, and they all have the same ikhtilaf. So now when you mark ayah number 3, you'll mark down yu'minun. However, when you go forward and you flip the page and you're reading the ayah, like for example, surah ayah number 23, فَأْتُوا بِسُورَةٍ مِّن مِثْلِهِ, and then you're going to be confused and you ask yourself that, hey, shouldn't there be ibdal here? I don't see it mentioned over here, but as we could see here, it was mentioned way back when he mentioned the ibdal when it first came up, which was in ayah number 3. So you'll be flipping pages in your Quran, you'll be flipping pages in Qatar, and you'll think that, hey, maybe he forgot to mention it, or maybe this is like one of the furushi ikhtilaf, in which actually normally he does have ibdal, but over here in this specific word he doesn't have ibdal. No, rather it was just mentioned over here. So the problem, the difficulty that might arise with this is that when you're marking ayah number 3, you have to go to ayah number 4. So instead of just being able to mark down all the ikhtilaf and only focus on ayah number 3 and go ayah by ayah at a time, you'll have to constantly be flipping your pages back and forth, and to be able to mark all the ibdals that are coming up in that hizb. So that's just one complication that might arise. Inshallah, it shouldn't anymore now that we are aware of it. Secondly, we have hudan lil muttaqin, hudan min and bil huda. So this comes in ayah 2, 5, and 6. So now, when you're on the first page of Baqarah, then you have to flip when you're marking fihi hudan lil muttaqin. Okay, well, you're not going to mark this technically because it's waqf and ikhtilaf. However, when you get to ayah number 16 and you flip like 3-4 pages forward in Qatar, you might be confused, like, hey, how come Warsh and Hamza and Kisai aren't doing their regular ikhtilaf over here? Well, you would have to flip back and you'd have to go check ayah number 2 to see what exactly is going on in this word and who has the ikhtilaf and what exactly are they doing. So when you're on ayah number 2, you actually have to flip forward in your Quran and you have to be able to mark ayah number 16 as well. That's a possible difficulty that might come up. Additionally, we have, as I said, the istilahat. أمالهن الأخوان حمزة والكسائي ولورش وجهان الفتح والتقليل. So now we have this term right here where he says al-akhawan. Now, we might not be familiar with this term. However, this is a term that the Qurra use to just quickly refer to 2 or more people instead of having to say their name or having to refer to the rumuz. So akhawan just refers to Hamza and Kisa'i. However, because this is the first time he's bringing it up, he actually spells out their names. But as you can see here in ayahs 23, 29, 34, and 37, in istawa fasawwahunna aba fatalaqa, he says amalahunna al-akhawan wa qallahunna warsh bi khulfin anhu. So as you see here, because he's already described who akhawan are, he already told you who they are, then he's not going to bring it again. Now, if you're still confused and you're like, wait, I forgot who al-akhawan are, who's al-thalatha, who do these terms refer to, you can go to page 5 of Qatar min Ghayth al-Nafa', and that's page 7 of the PDF. So page 5 of Qatar and page 7 of the PDF of Qatar. Now we could talk about how to mark your Quran, and as I said, this is called the shorthand version. Now this is something that you guys are probably all familiar with, this picture on this right side of the screen. It says جدول لبيان رموز القراء مجتمعين ومنفردين. So this is the chart which explains the assigned symbols to each of the qurra as well as the ruwat when they're munfarid, which is what we're familiar with here, when they're singular, when it's just alif referring to nafi, ba referring to qalun, and when they're mujtami'een, so one letter referring to multiple people at once. Now, if we take a look at this, we find, where is it at? Sheen. Sheen is what this chart is saying refers to Hamza and Kisa'i. But as we see in Qatar, he does not follow this left side of the screen, of the picture, sorry. He does not follow this, right? But he does, of course, follow this. Now, this is something that, like I said, you guys are probably all familiar with. Now, I will say that if you're marking and you're reading in class and you don't have this memorized, you're already behind. Like, this is something that should just be at the back of your head. It should be at the tips of your fingers. You should have it down 100%. Because now is not the time to be worrying about which letter refers to who. Now is the time to just be able to apply this and be able to mark your Quran. And this is what we'll be using. We'll be using this code, these rumuz, to write in between the lines of our mushaf, insha'Allah. So now I just explained to you how to mark your Quran, like I said, the shorthand version, but that should have answered the question that, of course, you can't just suffice with that when you're doing Jama Atfi, because you're not actually going through the order of who do I read for first, who's going to be after that, and etc., which is what we'll be doing now with this, going over the method of Jama Atfi, inshallah. So now we're going over the method of Sheikh Ali as-Safaqusi, which is what we know as Jama Atfi. So there's just a 7-point brief outline that I have made. And inshallah, if you're still not getting the concept, we'll be going over this concept, inshallah, in the next couple of slides with examples. So inshallah, we'll be able to apply what we learn here. The first point is that we are going to read for qalun and we're going to stop at an appropriate place. Okay, so we read the whole ayah, for example, and let's say in this ayah, there's an ikhtilaf in the last word of the ayah, in which Warsh and Hamza have an ikhtilaf in that last word only. Meaning they read the rest of the ayah the same, it's just that last word. So now, when we read for qalun, we say هَكَذَا قَرَأَهُ qalun, and then point number 2, we include all of those who agree with qalun, which is everyone except for Warsh and Hamza. So we say هَكَذَا قَرَأَهُ qalun وَالْمَكِّي وَبَصْري وَشَامي وَعَاصِم وَالْكِسَائي. We skip over Warsh and Hamza because all those other people, they agree with how qalun read it, because they also don't have ikhtilaf in this ayah. Then we work backwards to the closest ikhtilaf from where we stopped. So in this hypothetical, the only ikhtilaf is in the final word, in which Warsh and Hamza disagree with qalun. So what are we going to do? We go to that last word. And point number 4, we follow the order if there is multiple people that have ikhtilaf on the same word. So if there are multiple people that have ikhtilaf on a word, for example, in our case, we have Warsh and Hamza, we're going to follow the order of the list. That list of that paper that you guys got from Allah Nasab, and we presented it earlier on in the presentation. We follow the order from Abajadah's Haqti Kalam Nasa Fadaq Rasat. And we noticed that between Jim and Fa, who's first? Jim is first. So now what we're going to do after we read for qalun and all those included with him, we're going to go to that last word and we're going to see what's the order, and we see that it's Warsh, so we're going to read for him. Now, point number 5 is that we check to see if it's okay to read for him. Does he agree with what was read before? So now Warsh, does he agree? Does he have any other ikhtilafat in the rest of the ayah? No, he does not. So it is okay to read for Warsh, and we simply only read that last word. So this shows, point number 6, that the rāwī, in our case Warsh, who has ikhtilaf, he agrees with everything before that place of ikhtilaf. Meaning that Warsh reads the ayah exactly the same as qalun does it. He just differs in that final word. So we all simply need to read the last word, and that alludes to the fact that Warsh agrees with all the rest of the ayah that was read before this word. And then we're going to do this until you're done with the ikhtilafat. So after we read for Warsh, then we read for Hamza, and we follow the order. Hamza's next, and then we see if it's okay to read for him. Yes, of course, it's okay to read for him. There's no other ikhtilaf that Hamza has in the ayah. Then we're done reading that ayah. Now let's move on to some examples. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to be going through a quick example of a short surah of Surah Al-Humazah. And we're going to be practicing how to do Jama Atfi using the 7 points that we learned on the previous slide. So I took a picture of the screen and I'm looking at the 7 points, and inshallah we'll be able to go through each step, and I'll show you and how we're practicing upon each step when we're doing Jama Atfi. Now when you come to this surah, of course, like the first thing we want to do is mark it. Okay, so that's why I have all these markings in between of the letters as well as what they're doing on the side. Okay, so first thing we do is, of course, in point number 1 is that we read for qalun and we stop at an appropriate place. So we're going to start from the beginning of the ayah, which let's just stop at the end of the ayah, okay? So we say, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ويل لكل همزة لمزة هكذا قرأه قالون. Okay, so now how do I know that qalun reads like that? Well, there's no ba anywhere here, right? Yani, in the orange. So that's how I know that qalun doesn't have any ikhtilaf. He reads exactly like how Hafs reads. So now, point number 1 was read for qalun. Point number 2 is include with him all of those that agree with him. So now, who agrees with qalun? Well, there's only one ikhtilaf here, and that's al-Kisai. I apologize if that looks like a dal. It's supposed to be ra for al-Kisai. So now, literally, no one else has ikhtilaf. So now, when we say hakada qara'ahu, we're going to say everyone except for Kisai. So we're going to say hakada qara'ahu Nafi' wal-Makki wal-Basri wa-Shami wa-Asim wa-Hamza. Okay? So 6 out of the 7 qaris. Now what do? We work backwards to the closest ikhtilaf from where we stopped, which is where we stopped right here at the end of the ayah. Okay, closest ikhtilaf is this last word with al-Kisai. So in point number 4, follow the order if there's multiple people that have ikhtilaf on the same word. This does not apply here because there's only one ikhtilaf. Point number 5, check to see if it's okay to read for him. Does he agree with what was read before? Yani, does Kisai have any other ikhtilaf previously? Well, he does not. That means we could just simply read this one word. So when we say lumazih هكذا قرأه الكسائي. This is point number 6. So this shows that the rāwī who had ikhtilaf, he agrees with these 3 words. He doesn't have any other ikhtilaf. So yani, when we just say lumazih, this implies that the way that Kisai reads this entire ayah is that he says وَيْلٌ لِكُلِّ هُمَزَةٍ لُمَزِهِ. Okay? And then we do this, point number 7, until we're done with all the ikhtilafat, and we are done with all the ikhtilafat. Ayah number 2 is we can see kaf, fa, ra have an ikhtilaf on jama'a. What do? Over here, it's written a little bit small, so let me say it. They do jama'a, and then you have dad. It's not written over here, but it's he does idgham bidun al-ghunna. He's gonna say ma law wa'addada. So now let's read for qalun. How does qalun read? Well, he doesn't have any ikhtilaf as we could see. So let's so qalun, he just gonna read exactly like Hafs. One thing just to mention, a side note, is that normally I prefer to mark below. I'm not sure why I marked it on top this time. I think just out of out of the adab, we don't want to write above. We should try to write below, insha'Allah. I mean, that's just my personal thing. If maybe your Quran, your edition just has has too little space on the bottom, then yeah, I guess you can mark on top. So let's read for qalun. Point number 1 is read for qalun and stop in an appropriate place. We're going to read this whole ayah. الذي جمع مالا وعدده هكذا قرأه قالون. Point number 2, include with him all of those who agree with him. So now we know who disagrees with him, which is dad and kaf, fa, ra. So dad is included in fa. So what are we going to say? We're going to say everyone besides these 3. We're going to say هكذا قرأه نافع والمكي والبصري and وعاصم. Okay, وعاصم noon. Now what are we going to do? We work backwards to the point number 3. We work backwards to the closest ikhtilaf, and we see if it's okay to read for him. Okay, and that's point number 3. Okay, point number 4 is follow the order if there's multiple people. There's not multiple people on Ma'ala and Mu'addada, so we could just ignore point number 4. Now, point number 5. Check to see if it's okay to read for him. Is it okay to read for Dad? Does he agree with what was read before? So now let's check. Let's go back. Does he read Malan? Yes, he does. He doesn't change the Arab or something or anything else. Let's go back another word. Does he agree with Jama'a? Well, we can see that because fa is here and he's included part of fa, he does not agree. So we cannot read for dad now. Because if we were to say for qalun, الذي جمع مالا وعدده هكذا قرأه, those 4 qadis that I mentioned, and then we say the second wajah, ما لو وعدده هكذا قرأه khalaf, that's incorrect because that's implying that khalaf reads the whole ayah as الذي جمع مالا وعدده. That's incorrect. That's not how he reads it. So now we have to skip this wajah. We go over here. Okay, now we've point number 4, follow the order if there's multiple people that have ikhtilaf on the same word. What does this mean to follow the order? We take out that list that Maulana Sahib gave us in the beginning of the year or that I had brought previously in the presentation. We figure out which letter is first, who comes first on the list. So between Abajad has Hutti, Kalim Nasa Fada Qarasat, Kaf comes first. So now let's read for Kaf only. Okay, why am I doing that? We'll see in just a second. Let's read for Kaf only. جمع مالا وعدده. So I'm saying مالا. I'm skipping dad here again because we're not reading for dad yet, we're reading for Kisai. So هكذا قرأ, sorry, we're reading for Shami. هكذا قرأه Shami. Okay. Now who else agrees with Shami? Does Fa agree with Shami? He also does Jama'a, right? But Dad does not agree. Dad has this idgham bidun al-ghunna, so we can't say هكذا قرأه Shami wa Hamza. We have to say هكذا قرأه Shami wa Khalad. Okay, Khalad doesn't have this idgham bidun al-ghunna. So we say هكذا قرأه Shami wa Khalad wal Kisai. Kisai also doesn't have any ikhtilaf afterwards. Okay, so now we go back to work backward. Point number 3, which is work backwards to the closest ikhtilaf. And we see that it's Dad. Can we check to see if it's okay to read for him? Is it okay to read for him? Does he agree with everything that was read before? Yes, he does, because Jama'a has been read. Now we could say ما لو وعدده هكذا قرأه Dad. So the first wajah was alif, dal, ha, noon. Okay. Then second wajah was kaf, qaf, and ra. Okay, so that's 6.5, or that's 6 qaris and 1 rāwī. And now with the third wajah is dad, which makes it 6 qaris and the 2 rāwīs, so 7 rāwīs. So yani everyone has been read for, is my point. Now let's go to the third ayah. Maybe we're going to do 1 or 2 more ayahs. So let's first check what ikhtilafs there are. We have alif, dal, ha, and ra. Alif, dal, ha, and ra, they're not reading yahsabu, they're reading yahsibu. So when we read for Qarun, who's included in alif, we're not going to say yahsabu, we're going to say yahsibu. The second ikhtilaf is ma lahu aqlada, the mad munfasil. So we have, it's a bit small, but let me say it. Ba, dal, and ha are the qasr group, and ba has khulf. Ba, ta, kaf, nun, ra are the tawassit group, and ba and ta have khulf, and jim and fa have tul. As you can see, I circled the khulf guys, and I put the commas between the different groups, because like I said, we have to be consistent in our marking and in our symbols. Perhaps maybe I didn't mention this before, but obviously you guys are just starting out right now, so you're just getting used to it. But eventually you should know exactly what your personal symbols mean, and that might change a little bit over time in the beginning, so don't worry about that. Anyways, so we're going to read for Qalun first, and then that's point number 1. Read for Qalun and stop in an appropriate place. So let's read the whole ayah. يَحْسِبُ أَنَّ مَالَهُ أَخْلَدَهُ. So again, qasr is muqaddam fil adha. We're going to read the qasr on the mad munfasil first. So now, who agrees with him? This is where you crank out your list and you figure out. Let's just cross off all the people that disagree. So we read for qasr, right? We read qasr over here. That means literally anyone past this comma does not agree already, because these guys only do tawassut and tul. So you can't say هكذا قرأه قالون with Warsh or Hamza, because they do tul only. So automatically jim and fa are out. Ra, noon, kaf are out. Ba and ba, well, they're included in the qasr group too. So هكذا قرأه قالون في الوجه الأول. I think I forgot to mention that. هكذا قرأه قالون في الوجه الأول. Okay, so now we have the only options are dal and ha. Does dal agree with what was read before? Yes, he does. He also says yahsibu. Does ha agree with what was read before? Yes, he does. So we can say هكذا قرأه قالون في الوجه الأول ودال والمكي والبصري. If you want to break Basri down, you could say والدوري في الوجه الأول والسوسي. Okay, so we have ba, dal, and ba, dal, ta, and ya. Those are the 4 individuals who we just read for right now. Let me just double check to make sure I'm good. And yeah, I believe I'm right. Okay, now, okay, so that was point number 3. Work backwards to include with him all of those who agree with him. Okay, so now what do? We stopped here. Now we're going to work backwards to the closest ikhtilaf, which is right here. Can we read for anyone who agrees with yahsib? Okay, so we could read for anyone. Well, we're done with ba, we're done with dal, we're done with ha. Now we could also we could read for, let's see if we could read for anyone else who agrees with yahsibu, right? We have to check if they agree with the previous, what was already read. So can we read for ba again and do his tawassut? Yeah, we can. So let's read for ba. He's first on the list, right? So let's read for ba. ما له أخلده هكذا قرأه قالون في الوجه الثاني. Does anyone else agree with what just happened? Does anyone else do tawassut with yahsibu? So yes, ta does. Ta also does yahsibu. And kaf doesn't. Kaf, although he does do tawassut, he doesn't do yahsibu. Although noon does tawassut, he doesn't do yahsibu. Does ra do tawassut with yahsibu? Yes, he does. So now the second wajah is going to say هكذا قرأه قالون في الوجه الثاني والدوري في الوجه الثاني والكسائي. Okay, now that's where we stopped. We go to where we stopped. We check where the closest ikhtilaf is. Now let's check if we can read for anyone else. Who do we read for? We're done with ba, we're done with da, we're done with ha, we're done with ba, we're done with ta, we're done with noon, we're done with ra. We can't read for kaf because he has an ikhtilaf over here. Could we read for jim or fa? Yes, actually, we could read for jim because jim agrees with the yahsibu stuff. So we say ما له أخلده هكذا قرأه ورش. Now we're going to include fa? No, we're not going to include fa because fa doesn't agree with what was read before, which is the yahsibu. You have to say yahsabu. So now, let's move back even more then. Now we're done. Closest ikhtilaf is we're done with this stuff for now. We can't read for anyone here. We can't read for kaf. We can't read for noon, and we can't read for fa. So now let's move back even more. So now, who's left? We're done with alif, dal, ha, ra. Now we can read the normal reading, which is for yaf. Okay? So now, after alif, dal, ha is the next person on the list. At the top is kaf. So let's read for kaf. يحسب أن ماله أخلده. هكذا قرأه الشامي. Who else agree with Shami? Does Noon agree with Shami? Yes, he does tawassut along with يحسب. So now هكذا قرأه الشامي وعاصم, and this now only person left is Hamza. Does Hamza agree with what was read? No, he doesn't. He says tul. So now we go to the closest ikhtilaf, and we find jim, or we find fa, and now we can read for fa because he agrees with what was read before, which is now يحسب. Now we can say ما له أخلده هكذا قرأه fa. Now in total we have done all the wajhs for this ayah. Let's move on to this. I guess we could stop with this insha'Allah. Let's read for let's check where's the ikhtilaf. There's only one ikhtilaf, and that is ra has imala. Kisa'i will have imala on the previous word. So this is just like the first ayah. We're going to read for Qalun, which is we're actually going to be reading for everyone except for Kisa'i basically. كلا لينبذن في الحطمة. هكذا قرأه نافع, Maki, Basri, Shami, Asim, Hamza. And then we go close the ikhtilaf, which is ra, and he agrees with what was read before, so we say al-hutamih. هكذا قرأه al-Kisa'i. Okay, and we're done with that. I guess we can stop here. I don't want to go through the rest of it. Hopefully you guys get the point, inshallah. Again, if there's still any confusion, please feel free to reach out. An example of what our Quran should look like at bare minimum. Okay, so I just opened to a random page in my Sab'a Quran that I have, and as you can see here, perhaps it's a bit too small, but I have written in between the lines the letters of the rumuz, and on the sides, as you can see, I wrote down any of the furushi ikhtilaf. That, let's say, as you can see, fara over here, they don't say lanubayyitannahu, they say whatever that says. It's a bit too small for me to read. And so that's how we mark our Quran. We write down the letters in between, and then we write down if it's non-usuli, or let's say even if it is usuli, you just you have trouble remembering it. That's what you write down on the side. Okay, so this is the shorthand version again, how to mark your Quran. Just one more quick thing to add. I've actually just pretty much finished making the presentation, and I realized I forgot to say this, so I came back to this section of the presentation to add some more audio to this slide. And I just wanted to share a piece of advice from, inshallah, something I mean very, very genuinely to any student of Sabah, any Qiraat student, and that is that this is what one of our teachers had told us, that if you're not going to mark your Quran, if you're not going to do this shorthand version, do not call yourself a Qari. Okay? That's very, very unfair to the people that are actually doing the work, whether it be your classmates or people from any parts of the world. For you to not even do this, if we think about it, the Jama Atfi, it's the shortcut, right? And at the end of Ghunya, he mentions the 3, 4, 5 different ways of being able to read the different qira'at. And one of the ways that he mentions is Jama' bil ayah, and that is that you read each ayah 14 times. And I'm sure this is practiced in some places throughout the world. Additionally, one of the requirements of the students of qira'at is that they have to memorize the Shatibiyah. Okay, we don't do that. So we're already taking like a shortcut. And if you're going to take a shortcut on the shortcut, and you're going to only mark the portions that you have to read in class, and you're not even going to mark the entire Quran, then don't call yourself a Qari. It's like disrespectful to the teacher. It's disrespectful to your classmates. It's disrespectful to the fun. This is, a science that is directly linked to The Quran is directly linked to one of the sifat of Allah Ta'ala, if I may say. And this is something that has to do with the maqasid of nubuwah. Allah Ta'ala says that, when Ibrahim alayhi salam, he made the dua to Allah Ta'ala to send a prophet from amongst the people that are going to be living in Mecca. He says, يَتْلُو عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتِكَ وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةَ وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ. The first thing that he mentions is يَتْلُو عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتِكَ, that this prophet may recite your verses of the scripture to his people. So for us to not even mark our Quran and to call ourselves a qari, or for other people to assume that we're a qari, this is khiyanat at the end of the day. That's really what it is. It's just 100% khiyanat. So, it's very, very important that we take this seriously, and just from like a student, from a student standpoint, like if you're not gonna mark your Quran and it's like the week of exams and you have like half your Quran, you have like a whole bar to mark or something like that, like it adds up. You miss one day, you should not get in the habit of it. Make sure you make it up immediately. First of all, make sure you're doing the work every day, and if you can't, just make sure you make it up immediately. You don't want to let it add up. It just gets to be a lot at the end, and people have to like pull all-nighters for like a day or two trying to mark their Quran before exam time. But that's like that's like the lesser blame. The real blame is that we're taking on this responsibility of hamalatul Quran, and we're not even doing the job correctly. So it's a big deal, inshallah. So that's just again my 2 cents. Inshallah. Now we could talk about marking our notebooks, which is what I call the longhand version, and how we use the shorthand to aid us when we're marking our notebook. We could talk about how to mark our Qur'ans and how it's going to look, and I could show you guys some of my personal practice that I would do when I was marking, and just some things to keep it a bit more organized and things to help me out when I was actually doing the reading to Maulana Sab. So just a disclaimer is that of course, when I began reading, I was also a beginner. So this is not exactly consistent to what I have been presenting you guys so far. This is way back when I was just started learning how to mark. So you don't see like some of the writing on the side as there should be. You don't see some like circles or threes or whatever else I may have presented earlier. But that's just for on the first couple of pages until I got the hang of it and developed my own method of making a shout out to certain wedges and stuff like that. So let's just get started. I think you guys have already done this, so I'll just try to go through this super fast. Is that so? Let's skip the basmala and ayah number 1. We can start from right here. We say, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ذلك الكتاب لا ريب هكذا قرأه الجميع. I didn't even mention that over here because I didn't feel the need to write that, but okay, let's just keep going. So فيه هدى للمتقين. So now we have 2 wajahs over here, which is for dal, his wasl of the sila, and we have Fusi, he has idgham kabir. Okay, so now I'm going to read for Qalun, which is point number 1 on the list, and then I'm going to after that I'm going to stop in an appropriate place and include with him those who agree with him. So let's first read for Qalun. فيه هدى للمتقين. Okay, that's literally everyone except for Dal and yeah. So now I could just, and as you can see in 2.2, I haven't. Okay, let's break this down a little bit. So what I did was, ayah number 2. I'm not reading the whole thing together. I'm reading from Dhalika to La Raib, and then I'm reading from Fihi till the end of the ayah. So this is what I would call 2.1. This is what I would call 2.2. So ayah number 2, the second part of it. If there was, in some ayahs, you may break it up into 4 or 5 parts. So I would call it 2.3, or let's say like 10.1, 10.2, 10.3, 10.4, 10.5. That way I could just have it a bit more organized, as opposed to just having it, and just making it a bit more organized for yourself to be able to read it, making it very clear to read. You can have a lot of information at times, as you can see over here, that's packed together. So you don't want it like this. You want it to be neat, and you just want it to be organized so that you could read it very well in class to Maulana Sahib. Anyways, what was I saying? So first wajah, as you can see, number 1 is that we're going to be reading we just read it for everyone except for Dal and Ya. So what we're going to say is هكذا قرأه نافع والدوري والشامي وعاصم وحمزة والكسائي. Second, now we go back to the closest ikhtilaf, which is fihi, and then we follow the order. If there's multiple people that have ikhtilaf, So again, I'm just reading off that list, those 7 points that I had mentioned. We follow the order if there's multiple people that have ikhtilaf on the same word. So between dal and ya, dal is first on the list, so we're going to read for dal. فيه هدى للمتقين. هكذا قرأه المكي. And so right here, second wajah is going to be Makki, and I just wrote what he's doing. Okay. Third wajah is, we're going to now read lastly for Susi. فيه هدى للمتقين. هكذا قرأه Susi. Then I wrote here idgham, and for me that's just sufficient. You write down the whole thing of idgham kabir, and then again, this is just so you know who's reading and what they're reading. If you even want to write down like words of like in parentheses fi, in parentheses fi, that way you know where exactly to read from. That's fine too. Again, a lot of this is just personal preference, things to make your life easier, things to make it easier for you to read in class. So just do whatever you feel like you need to do to just make it easier on yourself. I number 3. I number 3 are reading all together, so it's not like I have 3.1, 3.2, it's just 3 by itself. So the first reading, of course, is going to be for, let's look at what are the ikhtilafat. We have yu'minun is yu'minun for jim and ya. As-salata, the taghlid for jim. Razaqnahum yunfiqun. We have ba and dal, ba having khulf. Okay, so those are the 3 words that have ikhtilaf. Let's read for qalun first. الذين يؤمنون بالغيب ويقيمون الصلاة ومما رزقناهم ينفقون. هكذا قرأه با. Okay, هكذا قرأه قارون. Let's include everyone that reads just like him. That's point number 2. Include with him all those who agree with him, which is literally everyone except for jim, ya, and dal. Okay, so that's why we say هكذا قرأه قارون في الوجه الأول. Again, he has khulf on the sila. هكذا قرأه دوري, Shami, Asim, Hamza, Kisai. Now, closest place to the ikhtilaf, point number 3, work backward to the closest ikhtilaf from where you stopped, and that is going to be the sila. Can we read for ba again? Yeah, he doesn't have any ikhtilaf earlier. Does he agree with what was read before, which is point number 5? Yes. And so we're going to read for قانون now. رزقناهم ينفقون. هكذا قرأه قانون في الوجه الثاني. Is Duri included in this? Does Duri have any ikhtilaf before? Because Duri does not have any ikhtilaf before, we could say هكذا قرأه قانون في الوجه الثاني والدوري. Okay, so that's number 2. That's the third way of reading now. Let's go back. Let's read 4. We can see that the closest ikhtilaf to the place that we stopped is Jim. Okay, now can we read for Jim? Is it okay? Does he agree with what was read before? He does not. Okay, Jim does not agree with what was read before. He has dal over here. So for us to just start from as-salata and be like as-salata wa mimma as-salata wa mimma razaqnahum yunfiqun. هكذا قرأه ورش. That's incorrect to say. Why? Because that's the listener is going to assume that he does الذين يؤمنون, and that's not the case. So we can't read this wajah yet. We can't read this wajah yet. This is similar to the whole ما لو وعدده ما لو وعدده, the dad. And earlier in the presentation, dad has ikhtilaf over there, and he has ikhtilaf in a word in jama'a as well, right? This is the exact same thing. We're going to read for right here, jim and ya. Between the two of them, so point number, we work backwards to the closest ikhtilaf from where we stopped, and we follow the order if there's multiple people that have ikhtilaf on the same word. So jim and ya, between the two of them, jim is first on the list, so we're going to read for jim. So we're going to read both these wajahs now. يؤمنون بالغيب ويقيمون الصلاة ومما رزقناهم ينفقون. هكذا قرأه جيم. So I wrote here جيم إبدال with تغليظ, إبدال of the hamza and تغليظ on the lam. Now we go to the closest ikhtilaf, which is actually the as-salata, because now all we have left is Susi, and his ikhtilaf is that he doesn't read taghlīz al-lam, he just reads it normally. So now all we need to do simply is say as-salata wa mimma razaqnahum yunfiqun, and we could start هكذا قرأ Susi. We could start from here because Susi agrees with how this was read. He also does do ibdal, he just disagrees with how this word was read, so that's why we start from there. Okay, so that's ayah number 3 done. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 with different ways of reading, all done. Now we have ayah number 4. Ayah number 4 is 2 different parts. 4.1, which is from وَالَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ all the way till قَبْلِكَ. And then we have 4.2, which is this last little part, وَبِالْآخِرَةِ هُمْ يُوقِنُونَ. So let's read for Qarun in the beginning. Actually, let's check what are the wajahs. We have jim and ya again on yuminun. We have all the different munfasil guys doing qasr, tawassit, tul. So there's 3 groups. Again, same thing here. Okay, so now let's read for قانون. والذين يؤمنون بما أنزل إليك وما أنزل من قبلك. هكذا قرأه قالون. who else is included in Qalun? Well, we read it in Qasr, so that already breaks down. We know we're not going to say like Jim and Fa because we didn't do Tul here, so we know they're not included. So between all the Qasr guys, which is Ba, Dal, and Ha, who agrees? Does Dal agree? Well, yeah, Dal doesn't have any ikhtilaf here, so we could say هكذا قرأه با في الوجه الأول والدال. Does Ha agree? Ha, not completely. Only half of Ha agrees, which is Ta. Susi doesn't say yu'minu. He doesn't say yu'minun. He says yu'minun. So that means we can't say Susi. We could say Ba, Dal, and Ta. So هكذا قرأه با في قانون في الوجه الأول والمكي والدوري في الوجه الأول. And I wrote here قصر. Second wajah is, so we stopped right here. We're going to go back to the closest ikhtilaf. Could we read for any of this? Could we read Qalun's second wajah of tawassut, or whatever we may think is appropriate? Well, we can't because we have to do the same thing here. So it doesn't match up, so we'd have to go back even more. Can we read for Qalun's second wajah over here? Does Qalun has any ikhtilaf in these two words? No, he doesn't. So yes, perfect. We could read for tawassut for Qalun. Now we're going to say, بِمَا أُنزِلَ إِلَيْكَ وَمَا أنزل من قبلك هكذا قرأه قانون في الوجه الثاني. Now who else agrees? Does Dal, okay, so the next on the list is Jim. Jim obviously doesn't agree because of the whole tool. Does Dal agree? No, Dal only does Qasr. Okay, so now you keep going through the list like that. And we can see here we have from between Ha, only half of Ha agrees, which is Ta, because Ta has khulf as well. He does Qasr and Tawassut. So because Qarun did Tawassut, we could also add Ta here. So we have Ba, Ta. Next on the list is going to be Kaf. Kaf also does Tawassut. Noon also does Tawassut. Fa does not do Tawassut, he does Tul. And Ra does Tawassut. So we could include all those people with Qarun's second reading. So when we read this Tawassut for both of these, and we stop here, we say, هكذا قرأه قارون في الوجه الثاني والدوري في الوجه الثاني والشامي وعاصم والكسائي. And I wrote here توسط. Closest, we stopped right here. We find the closest ikhtilaf. Could we read for anyone? Well, no, we'd have to read this one first. Okay. And again, like I said, I'm just going through it pretty fast. I heard you guys already covered this. So we have we did Ba. Can we do Jim? Because after Ba is Jim. He's the closest one on the list. But we can't read for Jim yet because he has the ikhtilaf earlier. Could we read for anyone else? Yeah, we could do Hamza's Tul. So we say, بما أنزل إليك وما أنزل من قبلك هكذا قرأه حمزة. Okay, now can we read for, now the only two people remaining are Ya and Jim. Can we read for either of them here? No, we have to go back to this word. Between Jim and Ya, Jim is first, so let's read for Jim. يؤمنون بما أنزل إليك وما أنزل من قبلك هكذا قرأه ورش. Now, when we read for Susi, we don't need to read this word again because he already agrees. The only ikhtilaf is that he doesn't do tul in the mad munfasil. So we could just read his qasr for this wajah now. بما أنزل إليك وما أنزل من قبلك هكذا قرأه Susi. So out of we read 5 different ways, and that covers all of the 7 qadis and their 14 rāwīs. Now let's read this last part. We see that there is Masul Khas, so there's going to be Jim with his Naql, and he's going to have Tathlith here, as well as we have Hamza, and with Khulf, Hamza has Sakt, and Khalad will be having Khulf, and as he falls under Hamza. So, and then we have also this Sila, which is going to be Ba with Khulf, and Dal, also having Sila. So we're going to read for Qarun first. وَبِالْآخِرَةِ هُمْ يُوقِنُونَ. So that was the first thing that we do. We read for Qarun to stop at an appropriate place. Number 2, we include with him all of those that agree with him. Dal does not agree. As we know, he does Sila only, so we could kick out Dal. Who else doesn't agree? Well, Jim and just Bad. Because Qaf has Khulf. Khalad has Khulf. Khalad reads it وَبِالْآخِرَةِ, and he also reads وَبِالْآخِرَةِ. So, but one of his wajahs is وَبِالْآخِرَةِ. This is a normal Hafs reading. So we can include literally everyone except for Dal and Jim. As you see, we can include everyone except for Dal, Jim, and Bad. Okay, as you see here, 4.2. هكذا قرأه قارون في الوجه الأول وحا والبصري والشامي وعاصم وخلاد في الوجه الأول والكسائي. Now, what are we going to do next? We find the closest ikhtilaf right here. Can we read it for Qarun's second wajah? Does he agree with what was read before? Yes, we can. هم يوقنون. هكذا قرأه قالون في الوجه الثاني. Does Dal agree? Does Dal agree with what was read before? Yes, he does. So we can say هكذا قرأه قالون في الوجه الثاني والمكي. Go back one more. Okay, closest place of اختلاف. We're done with this. Let's go back to the closest place of اختلاف, which is Jim and Fa with خلف عن خلاد. So now we're going to say between the two of them, Jim is first on the list. So we say وبلاخي. So now what is Jim doing? He has his نقل with تثليث as well as ترقيق of the ra. تثليث مع الترقيق I wrote here. 3 to 5 because he's going to have 3 wajhs now. So 3, 4, and 5. وبالآخرة هم يوقنون. هكذا يقرأه ورش في الوجه الأول. وبالآخرة هم يوقنون. هكذا يقرأه ورش في الوجه الثاني. وبالآخرة هم يوقنون. هكذا يقرأه ورش في الوجه الثالث. So now that's ورش done, 3 to 5. Now all that's left is the sect for Bad and Qaf's second wajah. So we're going to say وبالآخرة هم يوقنون. هكذا قرأه. You could just say Hamza, but maybe he might want you to spell it out in the beginning. هكذا قرأه ضاد وخلاد في الوجه الثاني. Okay, moving on. I believe you guys have covered ayah 5 as well, so let's just read through that quickly, insha'Allah. So as you can see, it's 2 parts. Ayah number 5 is going to be أولئك على هدى من ربهم, part number 1, and وأولئك مفلحون. However, I wrote 5.1 and 2 because this is literally the same exact thing. Okay, so this will apply to both. So now the only ikhtilaf here that we have is the mad muttasil, which is Jim and Fa are going to be doing tul, while literally everyone else does tawassut. So we read for Qalun, أولئك على هدى من ربهم. هكذا قرأه قالون والمكي بصري شامي عاصم كسائي توسط. Then there's no other ikhtilaf. This is Hude. There's only ikhtilaf waqfan, and we're not stopping here, so we can skip over that. Now we're going to read for the tul. Between Jim and Fa, you don't need to check who's first because they're doing the same thing. But if you want to write it down in order, you write Jim and then Fa. So أولئك على هدى من ربهم. هكذا قرأوا ورش وحمزة. وأولئك هم المفلحون. هكذا قرأوا what we said for the first توسط group. وأولئك هم المفلحون. هكذا قرأوه جيم فا. From 2 to 5, which you guys have already done in class, I believe. Now we're going to start with ayah number 6, and so we're going to do from 6 and 7 basically, which is your next sabak. So I'm going to, just a disclaimer, I'm going to go through it slowly, and I apologize if I stutter and stumble throughout, because there's quite a bit to mention, and it's going to be, I'm kind of doing it off the head as well. Even though this is here, I have to explain it and talk about why we can't read for certain people and stuff, so just bear with me, insha'Allah. And yeah, in all honesty, this is like my 3rd time trying to record for this slide, and it's just getting really difficult. I wanted to give you guys the best product, making sure I made no mistakes so I can explain it very clearly. That's not happening. Okay, I'm sorry, but like, it's just getting way too long to have to re-record for this slide. So let me just go through it with whatever possible mistakes are there. But then, of course, like mistakes in the sense that I might mess up when explaining it, but I'll correct myself and stuff. So inshallah, nothing to worry about in terms of you're not going to be getting incorrect information. This is all right. Okay, this is all correct information, inshallah. Anyways, sorry about that. So we're starting ayah number 6. What do? We're going to open Qatar. We're going to mark down everything. He has a lot of information for this ayah, because there's quite a bit of wajahs for this word right here and for over here. And inshallah, I'll just go through word for word. So sawa'un is going to be tul and tawassut group that we've just discussed over in ayah number 5. There's going to be tawassut is literally everyone except for jim and fa. Tul is going to be jim and fa. Alayhim is going to be the sila with khul for ba. There's going to be sila for dal. There's going to be sila, another way of reading for ba, which is going to be tawassut. There's going to be sila for jim. He's going to do tul. There's going to be sakt for dad, and I believe that's everybody. Dad is going to have sakt with saying alayhum. أأنذرتهم. Again, same thing. Actually, same exact thing over here as I just mentioned here. The whole for the sila, there's going to be ba and dal together. For sila, there's going to be ba reading just like how Hafs reads with no sila, there's going to be ba with his tawassut on the sila, there's going to be tul for jim, there's going to be sakt for dad. Now, as for these two hamzas, there's a few wajahs. Let me just read off my notebook here. There's going to be تسهيل الثانية مع الإدخال. There's going to be تحقيق مع الإدخال. There's going to be تسهيل الثانية بدون الإدخال. There's going to be تسهيل مع الإدخال. Okay, I actually already said that. There's going to be تحقيق الأول بدون الإدخال وتسهيل الثانية. I think that I had said that as well. And there's going to be تحقيق الهمزتين for fa and noon and stuff. And what else? Yeah, I believe that's it. Okay, so there's quite a bit of stuff over here. Again, silas, normal sila, and we have la yu'minun, we have yu'minun for jim ya fa. Now, I guess maybe I could just take out like 30 seconds to explain the difference between these silas. So why is there like 3, 4, 5 guys reading different types of silas? Like they have so many wajahs for this sila, but there's only normal wajah for this sila. On this one there's just ba and dal, ba with khud. Because over here this is whenever there's a sila followed by a hamza / alif, that's where all these extra guys come in. Ba has a third wajah, jim has a wajah, dad has a wajah, and so on and so forth. Actually, not so on and so forth. That's it. Anyways, so let's start reading. Let's read for ba first. What is ba doing? He's doing tawassut. He's doing no sila. He's going to be doing تسهيل الثانية مع الإدخال. So you'll hear what that sounds like. You'll have no sila here, you'll have no sila here, and have no ibdal. We're doing tawassut, and main thing is that the only thing that he's doing different than Hafs is basically تسهيل الثانية مع الإدخال, whereas Hafs does تحقيق الهمزتين. So now, first wajah, ayah number 6, first wajah, we're reading the whole ayah together, so it's not 6.1, 6.2 or anything, it's just ayah number 6. The first thing we do is إن الذين كفروا سواء عليهم أنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون. Okay, so now we did no silas, we did tawassut. What did he do here? That was تسهيل الثانية مع الإدخال. Idkhal is where you add the alif after this first hamza, so you say a, and then you're doing tasheel. Okay, so it's not, you're not doing that's tasheel, that's tahqiq ma'al idkhal, which I believe is one of Hisham's wajahs. So idkhal is where you add the alif after this first hamza. You don't say a'an, you say a'an, and tasheel is where you make the second hamza / alif into you make it you do tasheel on it. You say أنذرتهم. Okay, hope that made sense. So now that's ba. Who else does تسهيل الثانية مع الإدخال? Now, like I said, it's just a process of elimination. You could automatically take out jim and fa because we read tawassut, so jim and fa are not going to be included. You could take out dal because dal does sila. You could take out ya and fa and jim again. Even though jim and fa you could take out for the tul, you could take out ya as well because he doesn't because we just read for yu'minun and ya does yu'minun. So we could take out all those guys. Who else can we take out? With this tasheel الثانية مع الإدخال, mim, noon, and ra don't do it. So we pretty much took out everyone except for ba, ta, and lam. Okay, let me just double check. Yeah, jim, fa, mim, noon, ra, dal. Yeah, so now and ya. Okay, so now we took out. We have the only people we have left is ba, ta, and lam, and they also do تسهيل الثانية مع الإدخال. So now when we say this, we're going to be saying هكذا قرأ قارون في الوجه الأول والدودي ولام وهشام في الوجه الأول. Okay, and I wrote here تسهيل الثانية مع الإدخال. Second wajah is, now we find the closest ikhtilaf. And can we read for jim and fa? No, they do that. They do tul, and they have all this other stuff too over here, which we're not even getting into. But basically, we can count them out because they don't agree with what was read before. Does ya agree with what was read before? Does he do sila? Does he also not do silas like Qalun does? Yes, he also doesn't do silas. Does he also do tawassut? Yes. Does he also do tasheel الثانية مع الإدخال? Yes, he does. So now, Susi agrees with literally everything that was read. So now we can say لا يؤمنون هكذا قرأه السوسي. Now let's figure out what's the next wajah. Okay, so we still can't read for jim and fa. They have so many other things. We can't read for dal yet because he has all these other silas over here, 1 and 2. We can't read over here. We can't read for baz sila. We can't read for because he has other sila. And we can't read for jim, I believe that says. Can't read for jim. He has tul. We can't read for fa. For dad, he has tul. Now let's go back even more to over here. And we see that can we read for anyone who also doesn't do sila and also does tawassut? Yes, we can. And that is Hisham. We read for Hisham. So what does Hisham do? He does tahqiq ma'al idkhal. He does tahqiq ma'al idkhal. So he's not going to be doing tasheel thaniya. He just does the third way of reading is going to be like this. أأنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون. هكذا قرأه هشام في الوجه الثاني. Okay, هشام has خلف. He does تثقيل ثاني مع الإدخال. He does تحقيق مع الإدخال. So like we said, idkhal is adding the alif after that first hamza, and tasheel / tahqiq is going to be on the second hamza. Tahqiq is saying it normally, tasheel is saying it how Qarun said it in that first wajah. Now, we already discussed that we can't read for jim and fa. We already discussed that we can't read for dal. We already discussed we can't read for ba. Let's keep going back some more. Can we do any other wajahs over here? Anyone else also not do sila but they do tawassut? Yes, the normal reading. Meme does. So after lam is who's next on the list? There's meme, which is Ibn Zakwan. Ibn Zakwan also does. Ibn Zakwan agrees with what was read before. So now we can read for Ibn Zakwan's wajah, which is the tahqiq al-hamzatain, which is normal Hafs reading. So we say أأنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون. هكذا قرأه Ibn Zakwan. Who agrees with him? Any of the tawassut guys is with the remaining tawassut guys, which are Nun and Ra, Asim and Kisai. So هكذا قرأه ابن ذكوان وعاصم والكسائي. Okay. Point number 5 is we've exhausted everything over here that we could read so far. Let's go back one more word. Could we do? Okay, now we check. We follow the order if there's multiple people that have ikhtilaf on the same word. So between ba, jim, and fa, who's first? Ba is first. So we're going to read for ba first, which is his sila. So we say, عليهم أنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون. So قصر is مقدم في الأداء before the tawassut. We're not going to say the tawassut wajah first. We're going to do قصر on all of them. So that's هكذا قرأه قارون في الوجه الثاني. No one else agrees with him. No one else is doing what just took place there, which was the تسهيل الثانية مع الإدخال. We can't even add duri because we can't even add dal. We can't even add al-Makki because Makki doesn't do he does. He doesn't do تسهيل الثانية مع الإدخال. Makki does تسهيل الثانية بدون الإدخال. So we only for this fifth wajah it was just قالون في الوجه الثاني. For this fifth wajah it was just قالون في الوجه الثاني. Now we could read it. Now we could go back. Jim and Fa don't agree because obviously they don't do sila. Does Dal agree? Can we read for Tunzirhumu? No, we can't. He doesn't agree with what was read before. So now we go back to this word, which is the closest ikhtilaf that we're allowed to read for. Now we're going to be reading for Dal, which is the Tasheel Thaniya, like I said, bidun al-idkhal. So we're going to be saying أنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون. هكذا قرأه المكي. Now we could read the third wajah of Qalun. So now we still can't read for Jim and Fa. We already finished We already finished Ba Dal. We can't read for Jim and Fa over here, or Jim and Dad over here because of the tool, because they don't agree with what we read before. Anything else over here? No, we can't read for anything else over here. We're already done with the tawassut, guys. So now we go back to this word. Can we read for Ba, Jim, and Fa? Well, we check who's first on the list, and that's Ba. Can we read Ba's third wajah of tawassut on the silas? Yes, we can. And he agrees with what was read before. He also does tawassut on this mad muttasil. So now we say عليهم أنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون. هكذا قرأه قارون في الوجه الثالث. Okay. Now we're done. We're done with all these. Can't read for Jim and Fa. We already did Bad Dal. We already did Ya. We already did we can't read for Jim and Dad over here because they don't agree with those read before. Nothing over here because they don't agree with those read before. Can we read for Jim? We're already done with Ba. Can we read for Jim and Dad or Jim and Fa? Sorry, we can't. So there's no one we can read for from alayhimu onwards. We need to go back even more. Now we go to this. And the only people left now are Jim and Fa. Jim is muqaddam, is on the list. Jim comes first on the list, so let's read for Jim. What is Jim going to be doing? Jim is going to be doing the tool over here. He's going to be doing tool as-sila. He's going to be doing تحقيق الأول وتسهيل تحقيق excuse me. He's going to be doing تحقيق الأول بدون الإدخال وتسهيل الثانية. So he's going to be doing exactly what Makki did, I believe. You'll hear how it sounds now. So التحقيق الأول بدون الإدخال والتسهيل الثانية, and he's going to be doing طول for this sila, and he's going to be doing إبدال. Okay. سواء عليهم أنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون. هكذا قرأه ورش في الوجه الأول. Now he has a second wajah, which is going to be إبدال فقط. What did I mean by that? Let me just double check. Oh, I remember. He's going to be doing Ibdal on this Hamzatain. Let me just double check real quick. Yeah, so he has Ibdal faqat. That just means that he's going to be doing, he basically makes this into a Mad Lazim, I guess you could say. Like I said, I've recorded this slide like 2-3 times already. And it's very, very long, so it's getting really annoying. And I'm so tired right now. When I went to go Google Qatar min ghayth al-nafa, I typed in Sharu Qatar nada. I was so confused why the wrong book was, why the Nahu book was showing up. Anyway, so wajah number, his second, now we can read for Warsh's second wajah, which is the, as he says here, let me just read it. وله وجه ثان إبدالها ألفا مع المد مع المد. Okay. So now, how is this going to sound like? We don't need to read alayhimu again. Here, we already read that. So we could just do أنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون. So that's the mud, where he changes the second alif into it becomes a mud lazim, basically. Okay, that was wajah number 9. Wajah number 10 is, where's my kitab? Sorry. Wajah number 10 is going to be, well, we're back over here, and the only person we have left is Fa. Okay, we read for everyone else except for Fa. But now we're going to be doing Alay, we're going to do Fa's wajahs, so we don't need to read Sawa'un again, because we already, Sawa'un for, we don't need to read it as Tul again, because we already read that for a Jim, so we can start from this word. Fa does, the Dhamma and the Ha. He does Tahqiq al-Hamzatain, so that's good. He does, the Sakt is going to be actually for Dad, which is going to be the second wajah. So we're not going to do Sakt now. That's going to be what we do in the next wajah. And he does Ibdal over here. Now all we need to do is say, or actually there's Sakt in both places. So we're not going to be doing Sakt right now. That's going to be the next wajah. So we're going to say, عليهم أأنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون. هكذا قرأه فا, and only Dad has the Sakt. So we're going to say عليهم أأنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون. هكذا قرأه Dad. So that's how we read ayah number 6. And insha'Allah, as you can see here, ayah number 7 is on the next page. So we'll stop this slide, the recording for this slide here, inshallah. Apologize if that last ayah was a bit confusing. There was quite a few wajahs, and it got a bit confusing for myself too, having to explain everything and trying to like break it down. just based off of the rumuz and what I had written down. So let's see now. Let's do one more example, which is this final ayah of ayah number 7. And we're nearing the end of the presentation. So inshallah, I hope this is helping. And if you're still a bit confused, like I said, just pay attention now. And if you're still confused, just feel free to reach out anytime, inshallah. So ayah number 7. As we see here, we can break it up into 3 parts. So we have 7.1, 7.2, 7.3. 7.1 is from Khatam Allah to Sami'ihim. 0.2 is Ala Abasari Ghishawa. Ulum Adab Azim is 7.3. So now, ikhtilaf that we have here is the sila for qulubihim. There's going to be ba with khulf, as I wrote here, and dal. So they're going to be having sila, and yeah, that's it. So let's read for Qalun's first wajah, which is going to be literally everyone except for dal. ختم الله على قلوبهم وعلى سمعهم هكذا قرأه الجميع إلا دال. So هكذا قرأه نافع والبصري والشامي وعاصم وحمزة والكسائي. We'll find where we stopped. We go to the closest ikhtilaf, which is right here. And of course, he agrees with what was read before. We can read for Qalun's second wajah. قُلُوبِهِمْ وَعَلَى سَمْعِهِمْ. Now we ask the same question for Dal. Does he agree with what was read before? Of course, there's no other ikhtilaf. So we can say هكذا قرأه قالون في الوجه الثاني والمكي. Now we have the smudge munfasil, the 3 groups. I don't think it came up earlier, actually. Did it come up earlier? No, I don't think it came up earlier. So the 3 groups for mad munfasil is that there's qasr, tawassut, and tul. Qasr is going to be ba with khulf. It's going to be dal, and it's going to be ha. And from ha, that means ta and ya, and ta has khulf. So let me break that down again. Ba with khulf, dal, ta with khulf, and ya. Okay, tawassut group is going to be ba, like we said, with khulf. So this is the second wajah. So he has qasr and tawassut. Ta with khulf again, qasr and tawassut. Then we have kaf, noon, and ra. And for tul, we have jim and fa, which are going to be doing. For tul, we have jim and fa. They're going to be doing tul, of course. Sorry. That's the ikhtilaf on ala. The next ikhtilaf is that we have ha and one second. The next ikhtilaf is that we have ha doing imala, and we have da doing imala. Did I say jim? Jim is going to be doing taqleel. Okay, so jim, there should be a comma there from what we learned in the previous slides. But like I said, this is when I first started marking, so it's really messy. That's why I was like getting so confused over here, and it wasn't as smooth. And similarly, there should be a comma between the jim and hata. So jim is going to be doing taqleel, and hata are going to be doing imala. Then we have the sila. Again, ba has khulf, dal does not. Rishawa, ra, kisai has imala. Now we're going to read for Qalun first, and he does qasr. So وعلى أبصارهم غشاوة. هكذا قرأه قانون. Who agrees with him? So between ba, dal, and ha, no one. Dal doesn't agree because he does sila, and ha doesn't agree because he does imala. So it's just ba by himself. هكذا قرأه قانون في الوجه الأول. Second wajah is going to be all of this. This, you might ask yourself, is do we treat an earlier ikhtilaf in the word different than ikhtilaf that comes later on in the word? Like, do we ignore, or do we focus? Okay, let me say it one more time. We look at the closest ikhtilaf from where we stopped, and that would be this. Do we treat this one word as one word, or do we do him as one word and abasad as one word? Well, this will all be treated as one word. So between ba, jim, dal, ha, and da, who comes first? Ba comes first. So we're going to be doing ba's second wajah of sila. Does he agree with what came before? Yes, he does. He does qasr, right? أبصارهم غشاوة. Okay. Now, can we add anyone? Can we add dal? Does he also do qasr? Yes, he does. So هكذا قرأه قانون في الوجه الثاني والمكي. Now, let's go back. Could we read for ra? No, we can't read for ra because ra does tawassut. Let's go back even more. We already finished these two. Between these three, do we read for Jim? No, he doesn't agree. He does Tul. Do we read for Ha? Yes, we can. So let's read for Ha. Ha is going to do Imala. أبصارهم غشاوة. هكذا قرأه Ha. البصري. Can we add Ta? No, we can't add Ta because Ta does part of Kisai. He's part of the Tawasat group, so we can't include him. Okay. So we're done with all of that. We're done with these two words. We can't read for anything else. Now we have to go back here. Now let's read for Qalun's second wajah. Qalun's first on the list. Let's read for Qalun's second wajah, which is Tawasut. وعلى أبصارهم غشاوة. هكذا يقرأه قالون. Who else does Tawasut without doing Sila, without doing Imala, without doing Taqlid, without doing Imala here? Shami and Asim. Kisai doesn't agree. From all the Tawasut group, guys, it's just Kisai left. And so Kisai doesn't agree. So it's all the Tawasut guys except for Kisai. لكن قرأه قالون. And actually all the Tawasut guys except for Kisai and Ta. Ta has khulf, right? Ta doesn't do, Ta has qasr and Tawasut. So هكذا قرأه قالون في وجه الثالث والشامي وعاصم. Can we read for Kisai now? Can we read for Kisai now? Well, yes, but we can read for only half of Kisai, which is Sin, Abu al-Harith. Why can't we read it for Ta? Because Ta has the Imala here. So what are we simply going to do? We're just going to say Ghishawe. Okay? هكذا قرأه Sin, Abu al-Harith. Now we go back even more. So we read for any of these guys, Jim, Ha, Ta, or Ba, Jim, Dal, Ha, Ta. Dal, Da is already done. So now between Ba, Jim, Ha, and Ta, we can read for Ba. We can read for Ba's fourth wajah, which is going to be Sila. So we say أبصارهم غشاوة. Now you're probably wondering, like, wow, Qadun has 4 wajahs. How does that work? So here's a rule. Whenever he has khulf on sila, but he has 2 automatically, right? أبصارهم غشاوة, أبصارهم غشاوة. He also has khulf here. That means he's gonna have qasr, no sila. He's gonna have qasr with sila. He's gonna have tawassut, sila. Tawassut, no sila. That's how it equals 4. That was the 4th wajah. أبصارهم غشاوة is tawassut with sila. The third wajah was Tawasut, no Sila. Second wajah was Qasr with Sila. First wajah was Qasr, no Sila. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Now, can we read for anyone else? Can we read for Jim? No, Jim doesn't agree. We read for Ha. Between the, well, we already finished for Susi. Okay, so and now we could do now we're doing Tawasut, so we can read for Duri's second wajah, which is going to be Imala again. So we say أبصارهم غشاوة. هكذا قرأه Duri. So Duri's second wajah of Imala because of his khulf that he has on between Qasr and Tawasut on a mad munfasil. Now, to read for anyone else, we can read for Ta. He also agrees for Tawasut on a mad munfasil. So we say أبصارهم غشاوة. Imalatan on both Imalas on both places. He's included in the Ra. Now, can we read for anyone else? No, we're done with Ra, we're done with Ba, we're done with Dal, we're done with Ta, we're done with Ha. We can't read for Jim yet, he has to go back, so let's go back more. All we have left is Jim and Fa. And between Jim and Fa, Jim is Muqaddam, so let's read for Tul, and we're going to do his Taqleel. وعلى أبصارهم غشاوة. Okay, that was a good Taqleel. هكذا قرأه ورش. And now we can just fix up the difference that Hamza has with Warsh, which is just going to be saying أبصارهم normally. أبصارهم غشاوة. هكذا يقرأ حمزة. That's 10 wajahs for this 3 words. ولهم عذاب عظيم. Only اختلاف is بعدال, which ba has خلفان. So ولهم عذاب عظيم. هكذا يقرأه الجميع إلا الدال. So هكذا يقرأ نافع, بصري, شامي, عاصم, حمزة, كسائي. And then we read second wajah. ولهم عذاب عظيم. هكذا يقرأه قالون في الوجه الثاني المكي. So again, I apologize if it was a bit stuttery, stumbly throughout. Like I said, I'm pretty tired right now. And just wanted to make sure I get this out for you guys, whether it be with the mistakes. Of course, I would prefer it to be without the mistakes. But that was pretty much the bulk of the presentation. Right now, it's just going to be like a few closing remarks and some important rules, as I said. But yeah. So again, I apologize if I was maybe a bit unorganized. Inshallah, maybe I could try again, do this presentation again. But inshallah, I really hope this helps. Jazakumullah khairan. End of this presentation, I just felt it important to mention a couple of important rules. This is by no means exhaustive. There's definitely a lot of other things that I probably could have mentioned, but these are definitely just some things that when I was helping some students out, it didn't seem like they remembered these things. So I just felt like it was important to note these. That way, when you guys are marking on Quran, inshallah, you could keep this in mind. And if you could just memorize this, the thing that's about to appear on the next slide, then inshallah, that'll actually help you throughout your entire sabah journey, inshallah. So there's two things that I wanted to mention. And like I said, could have been a lot more things, like the rules about mafsul am, mafsul khas, and all the different wajhs that come out from that. And but two things that I wanted to mention, especially because they came up at the beginning, is the rules of the mad, both the mad munfasil and mad muttasil. We have the rules of silas. Okay, so this came earlier in the presentation, but inshallah we'll just go through it over here as well. So like I said, if we could try to remember these, especially the mud rules, inshallah that'll help us throughout our entire sabah journey. There's quite a bit that maybe we learned in Ghunya that we didn't quite understand, because yeah, I mean, learning that much theory, it might get a little bit exhaustive. It might not help us remember everything. But of course, although I only mentioned these two things about muds and silas over here. Other rules, other more difficult rules, like the mafsul am, mafsul khas stuff, like once you actually get the practice of it, inshallah, you'll get the hang of it, and it shouldn't be too big of a deal, inshallah. So as for the mad munfasil, okay, so we're starting right here on the right side. Mad munfasil, it consists of three different groups of readings. So we have the qasr individuals. The qasr group is ba, dal, and ha. Okay, ba, dal, and ha will be doing qasr. Ba, ta. Okay, so now they're actually included in the qasr group as well. But ba has khulf, and ta, he's part of ha, so he has khulf as well. Ba, ta, kaf, noon, fa, ra are the tawassut group. Okay, they are the tawassut group. And jim and fa are the tul group. Now, an easier way, mad muttasil is actually easier than mad munfasil, and that is that tul is going to be the same for both groups. We have jim and fa, they do tul for mad munfasil, and then they also do jim and fa also do tul for mad muttasil. And now, literally everyone else is going to be doing tawassut. Okay, so this is a easier one to memorize. Mad muttasil compared to mad munfasil. As for some of these points is here, just random points. Okay, so this first point, it says it's okay to break up phrases and sentences so long as it doesn't lead to a fahish meaning. It doesn't lead to ma'na fahish. For example, some students, they ask me, I believe in ayah number 3 of Surah Baqarah, when reading the wajah for Susi, after reading Warsh's wajah of Warsh, he does الصلاة ومما رزقناهم ينفقون. هكذا قرأه Warsh. And then when they want to read for Susi, they want to say وَيُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةَ وَمِمَّا. Why? Because they just want to add the fi'il for the maf'ul bihi and all that stuff, right? Just to have them at least like a for the meaning, right? Okay, don't do that. Okay, please don't do that. The reason I'm saying this is because it's, imagine like you have like 20 plus wajahs in an ayah, and you or another student is like, he's adding extra words that they don't need to add. They themselves are trying to read, and it just gets like really, unfortunately, it just gets annoying that a person's like adding extra time. And of course, Jama, doing sabah it already takes a lot of time, and everyone's worried about like, not having to have extra classes at the end of the year. So whatever you could do to save time, do it. Of course, so long as it doesn't lead to ma'na fahish, then you do not add extra words. For example, ma'na fahish to be like if you're doing like the wajah of la ilaha illallah, for example, and you say la ilaha la ilaha la ilaha. That's like obviously that's, I'm just doing it for the sake of example, but that is ma'na fahish. Okay, so we don't want to say that. So that's just one point to remember. Now, a rule of silas is that, as has come up before in this presentation, is that Qarun will have sila with khulf, and Ibn Kathir will have just regular sila with no khulf. So that's something to remember because it's going to come up quite a bit. Additionally, we have the sila followed by a hamza. I think it came up earlier in one of the examples that we did. The sila followed by a hamza. It's going to same as above. Qalun is going to have. Actually, I didn't mention something. So Qalun is going to have sila with Khalif. Ibn Kathir is going to have sila. So that's the sila followed by a hamza. And then Warsh is going to have sila with tul, and Khalif will be having sakt on there as well. And if there's a mad muttasil in the ayah, or mad munfasil as well, I believe, then Qalun will have sila with tawassut as well. So those are just a couple of rules to keep in mind. So that's the end of the presentation. I hope it was helpful. If anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out. Insha'Allah, I really hope this was able to help you guys. Inshallah, please keep me in your du'as, me, myself, and my family, and definitely our beloved teachers as well. Jazakumullah khairan.